Hey guys, Jehuty here with another Tekken video, and after my top 5 beginner mistakes video I thought, well, let's make a whole series all the way from green ranks up till Fujin, and therefore for you today I've compiled my top 5 tips I believe that can help you get out of green ranks. As per usual of these videos, you'll find the timestamps in the description to skip to the part you want to, and without further ado, let's get into it. So my first tip pertains to getting off the floor properly after getting knocked down. The thing is, I noticed a lot of people in green ranks tend to get up the same way all the time, especially at the wall. And if you're doing this, then it's definitely a disadvantage to you. However, if your opponent is doing this and you can pick up on it, then you can use this to your advantage. But for now, let's look at all the ways you can get up off the ground. You have quite a few options getting off the ground when your body is facing upwards and your head is away from the opponent. First thing of course you have is the 3 input, which is a low kick, and you also have the mid get up kick, which is a 4 input. In Tekken 8, both of these options are now safe on block. What that means is that if your opponent blocks these, there's no real risk attached to it, so don't hesitate and utilize this in Tekken 8. Let's continue further down the line with the other options. We have the toe kick, which is done by down 3. Then we have the spring kick, which is the 3+4 option. If you want to get up and just put a bit of distance between you and your opponent, you can just press back. And the good thing about this, you can also just do it to be blocking immediately. You can also do this on the spot by pressing up and back immediately, and you can also do this with down back to do a low block, and also on the spot by pressing up down back. You can also do some other stuff like rolling into the background by pressing 1, or rolling into the foreground by pressing down 1. You can also decide to stay on the floor by pressing 1 and then afterwards pressing down to stay on the floor, or doing it into the foreground by pressing down 1 and then also pressing 1 to stay on the floor. The only times you need to be extremely careful is when you're lying on your stomach. There are a lot of scenarios by your opponents that bench on you being in this position and getting up wrongly, and when you do that, they can launch you in the air for a full combo. So pick up when your opponent tends to put you in these situations more than once, so that you don't get up in the same way. The other tip I'm going to give you is actually something that can help you immediately. It's called teching off of the ground. So we have these in 2 versions. The first scenario is that you have certain moves that hit you back in such a way that when you land onto the ground, your legs are up in the air, and you can press the back button after you're hit by these attacks, and your character will roll back instead of being in that position, so you can get out of a lot of tricky scenarios through that. The other option, of course, is like after you eating a big air combo, you can press the 1 input or the 2 input on impact on the ground, and your character will do a little roll, it's called a tech roll, and get up immediately. It's easier if you mash the input whilst impacting with the ground. You can of course also tech roll in a scenario where your opponent hits you with a move as you're laying on the ground. So in the moment of impact, you can mash the 1 or 2 input to tech roll and get up immediately. So that about sums it up for getting up. Remember, if you're getting hit by the same stuff, it's time to change it up. Do not be predictable. And if your opponent is predictable with their options of getting up, exploit that. So the next point is combos and everything else which feeds into that, so launchers, counter hit launchers, wall combos, and of course low parry combos. So now let's look at this example here where this Lily player blocks this big low of mine. Instead of launching me into the air for a big combo leading into the rage art, decides to just go for the rage art. And that's a whole lot of damage left on the table. And I fumble the same thing up because I have the same opportunity and I don't launch the Lily player into the air. Yeah, so first of all, I recommend you go and watch my top 5 beginner mistakes video because I don't want to retread too much on this topic. But what I want to say though is that what you're looking for in the combos is consistency. You may not get that crazy damage you saw in that one combo video online. However, what you'll get is something you yourself can reliably execute all the time, and that is consistent in that it doesn't just randomly drop for some little small reasons like being off axis or some other stuff. Tekken 7 already introduced sample combos, however, Tekken 8 has these combo challenges. I recommend you look into it because you'll find a wide variety of them with different damage outputs and different difficulties. The scenario where you go online to watch videos would maybe pertain to low parry combos because unfortunately the game doesn't show these to you. You don't really need more than one, maybe two, and the same thing also goes for wall combos. You can check these online as well, and once again you just need one, maximum two of these. The only special mention which is really needed goes to counter hit launchers, and that is because in green ranks I realize a whole host of people drop their counter hit launcher combos, or even worse, when their move successfully connects as a counter hit launcher, they do not even attempt a combo. And the reason behind this is kind of simple. When they utilize that move, they actually don't intend to use it in the way that it's going to be a launcher. So you have to practice this so-called intention. So for that, you need to go into practice mode. Under practice settings, you go to player counter and you set that to shuffle. And what this does is that it randomizes the counter hit property of your move on your opponent. Why do we do this, you may ask? Well, as I said, the intention is to get used to the fact that when you're using this move, you want it to be a counter hit launcher. So that means in certain scenarios, it's going to launch the opponent and then you have to be ready to do the pickup and get the combo follow-up afterwards. You have to do this a couple of times with all your counter hit launchers so that when the scenario arises for you to capitalize on one of these counter hit launchers in a real match, you are good to go without a problem, without a second thought, no hesitation. One of the characteristics of green ranks is that people are attacking all the time and putting pressure on you. And what you're going to hear a lot is that, oh, you know, just sidestep this or sidewalk this and launch punish this. But it's much easier said than done, especially at the beginning. But what you can do, however, is when you're being pressured, after blocking your opponent's move, you can press back to get a bit of distance between you and your opponent with a backdash, and then executing your power crush immediately afterwards, which will armor through their attack and then hit them. Your other option is the generic crouch jab, also known as down jab. You can execute this in crouch by pressing 1 or 2, or also pressing down 1 or 2 depending on your character. And just like with the power crush, after your opponent does their attack, their string, and is done, before they can do something else, you can execute this quickly and interrupt them because it comes out really fast, and as an added benefit it goes underneath highs. So after your opponent has been interrupted, you can use this as a breather to put a bit of distance between you and your opponent and reposition yourself. Rage arts are a really great comeback mechanic that do a ton of damage. However, they're very risky, but that doesn't stop a whole lot of people in green ranks to utilize it as a panic button. If that's you, you need to stop with it. You need to be more calculated with your rage arts. However, if your opponent is just throwing it out willy-nilly like that, you need to pick up on that ASAP and use that against your opponent. So what do I mean by that? What you can do when your opponent is low on health is you can just dash up to them, and in green ranks there's a very big chance they may just throw it out like that and you can block and then launch them for it. Alternatively, you can also pressure them with very quick moves like the 1 jab or the 2 jab that also recover extremely quickly. So in case they throw it out, you can still recover from your move, block them and then launch them. However, there's one other problem with the rage art, and is that a lot of people just can't help themselves from pressing that button because it's a shortcut button, of course. So maybe if that's you, you need to consider getting rid of the shortcut input itself under controller input section. And what that means is that from then on you will be inputting it manually, and that is a universal input now in Tekken 8, which is down, forward, 1+2. What this does is that because it's a multi-button press, you need to think slightly more about it before executing it, and that in itself may result in you pressing it less times without thinking. So, movemento. Yeah, it's no lie that movement is one of Tekken's core fundamentals. However, what do we actually mean when we're referring to movement? Yeah, what we're actually talking about is creating distance between us and the opponent. So that can mean stepping into the background. It can mean stepping into the foreground. It can also mean stepping backwards so that your opponent's attacks do not touch you. And I mean actually do not touch you. Not blocking your opponent's attacks. We're talking about their attacks not touching you, just touching the air, and we refer to this as whiffing. So what does this actually mean for you? This means a very big opportunity to capitalize on. You see, in green ranks, people are throwing out moves all the time without consideration of the distance between you and them. So what you need to get used to is what kind of moves the characters generally have and how they end, so that when a move or a string is about to end, you know that you can now come and capitalize on it in case it whiffs. So for you to practice this, you're going to have to find out what kind of moves your character has that cover a bit of distance but still come out relatively fast. So we're going to use Raven as an example for this. Raven has a couple of good ones like 4-1, which covers quite a bit of distance and is really fast. Then we have down back 2-1, which is slightly slower but does more damage. Then we have his ultimate whiff punishment tool, which is forward 3, which leads into a full combo. Yes, Raven has a couple of other ones, and your character most likely does as well, just like any other character, but at first you actually only need 1 or 2 of them. You need to first get used to the idea of actually whiff punishing before you can graduate to the bigger stuff. So that about sums it up for my green ranks video. You guys know the drill. I'll see you on the yellow ranks video. Consider subscribing because that helps me the most, and of course there's other stuff on the Jehuty Gaming channel. This is your boy Jehuty, and I'm out.